Okay, hello everyone and welcome back to Always Watching. For those of you new to my channel, I review all things movie and TV. So if you like what you hear, subscribe, comment, and share the video. So we knew this day was coming, but we didn't know it would be coming so soon. I was so impressed with this episode. It came out of nowhere. It was incredibly well written and incredibly well acted. And now that Logan is gone, how will these children cope? To be honest, like how will any of these people go on? And this episode was brilliant because it really did a great job of soliciting the same emotions, the emotions that occur when someone dies unexpectedly, right? The shock, the awe, the paralysis, this sort of like, I don't know what to do next energy. And it was made possible by the actors on this show, right? Like, this show is satire. So these characters are not meant to be likable. They have to be watchable and we have to connect with them. And so to somehow balance all of that, to kind of break that fourth wall, I guess, and to get us to actually sympathize with what they're going through and make it relatable, right? Like this kind of universal, when someone dies, it's a shock. And the episode did such a great job of not only making us, sympathize with it, but also relating to it. And I thought that was an incredibly difficult thing to do, given the context of the show. So it was very well done. And I'm happy we didn't follow Logan around. Like, I'm glad we didn't see him collapse. I'm glad that we weren't really there with him. And the reason for that is because it puts us in the same sort of mindset as his children, right? Because we don't know what's going on. So throughout the episode, I'm like, yeah, he can't be dead. Oh, is he dead? Like, you're kind of going through this roller coaster of emotions and you're experiencing it with them. And the actors do a good job of guiding you through this crazy roller coaster of emotions, right? You're in that space of uncertainty. With this family, you never know, right? And they make the decision not to show us the body fully. We get only images of him getting chest compressions, which I think killed him. Like the amount of times they were pumping into his chest, I'm like, this man is dead. But you don't know, it's like there's hope. So the fact that we don't see Logan fully and he's not, on camera, like often, like you just get glimpses, it adds to that tension where you're like, is he dead? Is this some sort of sick test? Like, you know what I mean? Like you can't really put anything past this family. So it adds that uncertainty, right? Like you don't really know what's coming. The aesthetic of this episode was fantastic, right? Like they're all dressed in black, going to a wedding, preparing for a funeral, right? And the fact that he died in the air while they were out at sea, right? Like their entire future is literally up in the air. And they're sort of placing the companies on shaky grounds, right? Shaky waters, which is why I love how Shiv was like, yeah, can we just let the plane circle the sky while we think? And then she goes on to complain about the fact that they're not on land yet. Like they're just spiraling out of control and they don't know what to do. And again, it's very relatable, right? Like what do you do when someone close to you dies, right? Like there's nothing you can do, to be honest. Despite the tension, the family doesn't break apart, right? Like in episode 1 of the series, these kids would have killed each other. They would have gone, they would have done anything to become the successor. And they've actually come together. And I was impressed by the fact that there was no ego here. Like they were very good at balancing each other's emotions, not, being too much of an asshole to the other, if that makes sense. Like they were very careful to ask each other's opinions, keep it all like on. Nobody tried to say, okay, I'm in charge now, you guys do what I say, which is what they would have done before, right? So they kept it even and they kind of kept it together. And I think that's what's going to help them moving forward. If Logan knew he was going to die, would he have gone to Connor's wedding? Honestly, probably not. And it's really interesting because Logan really wanted Roman with him. And I think with Logan, he sacrificed family for business. Like that's what he does, right? He's on a business trip instead of being with his family. And so he died doing what he loved, saving a deal at the last minute, doing business. He didn't seem to care that he was missing Connor's wedding. He was just like, it is what it is. Like, and that's kind of the compromise that he makes. And I thought it was interesting that he really wanted Roman with him because I think he still wanted some part of his family with him because he died on a plane full of strangers. And that might not have been ideal, but I think Logan would have enjoyed the fact that his kids were whispering sweet nothings into his ear, right? Like the idea of them, like this whole idea of them talking to him on the phone, you know, like, come say hi to your dad. Like, it was a very, 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 very well done, right? Because they're all telling him they love him. Whether or not he could hear it is slim to none. But I really like that idea, you know, like, of his kids running to the phone, telling him how much he loved. You know, I think he would have enjoyed that, right? Like, got some type of kick out of it, especially since these conversations take place. It seems these episodes are taking place day by day. And so, you know, like, they just had a dramatic night. So, you know, just the tone, right? Like, the emotions that were coming out. And the thing about Logan is that he loves his kids, but he doesn't like their insubordination and their lack of loyalty to him. And same with his kids. They love him, but they don't really like what he's done to them in terms of not picking a successor, in terms of putting them under all this pressure. And Ken summarizes it best when he says, you know what, I love you. You know, I can't forgive you. That's okay, but I love you. And that summarizes the entire sort of, you know, dynamic in this entire, you know, family. So the episode starts off with Roman talking to Logan on the phone. So Roman is wrapped back in, you know, he's on Team Logan. And I think Roman feels particularly bad because he could have been on that plane to Sweden, right? Like, he could have actually been with his father in these last few moments. And I think that's kind of tearing him apart a bit. And the last words he says to his dad is, you're a cunt. Like, are you a cunt? Because he feels bad about Jerry. And shout out to Jerry. Like, if the man who fired me died within hours after firing me, I wouldn't really care either, right? Like, the way that Jerry showed no emotion towards Roman, I was like, fair game. Like, I wouldn't have given a damn either, right? And Roman is so in need of consoling and so in need of, like, someone to understand his situation, more so than the other two siblings, right? Like, there's this wonderful moment where he randomly grabs onto Connor's, like, suit, right? Like, he just so badly wants someone to hold him, but nobody's doing all that, let alone Jerry, right? She's like, ma'am, yes, sir, you need to be on your way. And so Logan was restructuring the company. He was doing a lot of crazy things, but at the worst possible time. And the thing with Logan is he knew he had health problems. He knew he had issues, but he ignored them. He ignored them, and that was his kryptonite, right? He didn't know when to quit. And for that, you know, he suffered. And so I think the only reason Lucas was willing to see him in Sweden is because he kind of knows his raggedy kids were the ones that messed up the deal. And so I think the fact that he was on his way to Sweden suggests that he could probably have gotten more money. And now that he's gone, I'm not really sure what the dynamic is, because Logan is seen as the competent person in all this, and his kids are seen as not that competent. And so I'm not really sure, you know, like, I don't think Lucas really respects these kids. So I'm not, like, the aftermath of this, we're not really sure. I also thought it was really interesting that Logan chose not to go to, still told Carrie to tell Connor that there might be hope that he was coming. That was his really nice way of being like, I love you, but I ain't coming to this stuff. And Connor's reaction, you know, it's quite sad because he finds out his father died and he won't come to the wedding, and that he was never coming to the wedding, right? Like, he's dead, he's on a plane to Sweden. Like, he had to process all of that. And the minute Shiv and Kendall come up to him, he already knows something is wrong, right? He says, oh, is there something wrong with Dad? And I felt like his kind of reaction is in good contrast to Shiv's reaction when she thought it was her mom, hoping it wasn't her dad. So I think Connor is really interesting because he has this love-hate relationship with his father, right? Like, he knows his father doesn't really respect him. And everything about Connor's wedding felt cheap, to be honest. Like, you're on this boat, these very cheap decorations. It's not really Connor's taste. Like, Connor has great taste. This isn't really him. The fact that his father would be at his son's wedding while he marries an escort, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think Logan respected Connor, but he loved him. But he wasn't going to be caught dead on that ship. So, and Connor says something sad, you know, he's like, I'll never get a chance to make him proud. You know, he kind of knows that his father didn't really like him, but he provided for him. And I think Connor, again, he was kind of agitated that his father wasn't there for him, but at the same time, he was like, what to do now? And the effects of this funeral on Connor should be interesting because the decision to move forward and marry Willa was kind of perfect because, you know, life goes on in the end, right? Like, the fact that New York is grieving this giant titan and there's just the two of them at the altar. You know, he's both happy that he's married and he's also grieving the loss of his father. Like, that contrast, you know, can something wonderful come out of something so horrible? I don't know. You know, like, Connor's reaction to that would be interesting. And that was a wonderful shot towards the end. So, you know, Connor's wedding turned into a straight up funeral. When the news first breaks that Logan is unwell, first Shiv gets the call and then Roman gets the call. And I think Shiv felt like horrible for not being the one to pick up the phone, right? She kind of lost these precious minutes where she could have maybe said something to him he would have heard, right? She could have said, I love you, and maybe he would have heard it. And she lost that time, right? And I think that's something that she was sitting with and that she really just didn't know how to process. And the way the scene was shot was really brilliant because first, nobody wants to panic, right? Everybody stay calm. So Logan died in the bathroom, apparently. And the way they describe it, right? Like, did they break into the bathroom or did they open the door? Like, these are two different vibes, right? If you had to break in, he's probably dead. If you had to open the door, then maybe there's some hope. Maybe he passed out, right? So everyone is trying to use language to keep it calm, right? Nobody wants to call it. Everybody's trying to play down the seriousness of the situation, even though they know he's dead, right? But nobody wants to confirm that he's dead. And I kind of understood, you know, Roman's denial because he was the only one that was like, listen, we don't know the situation. Maybe he's alive. Maybe he's passed out. And the way this episode was shot, it kind of helped with Roman's theory where you're like, maybe he is alive. Maybe he did pass out. Right? And I think that was out of respect, right? Everybody's thinking about, okay, what do we do after? And Roman was the only one that was like, yo, like, can we just process this for a second? You know, like, he ain't dead until the experts say he's dead. Right, and I thought that was a very reasonable reaction, right? Like he wasn't at all delusional for thinking that way because, you know, nothing is clear. And that lack of clarity is just causing confusion and chaos. And so everybody is just suspended, waiting for the other guy to do something, right? Like you have two camps, you have these people on the plane and then you have his children. And everybody's waiting for someone else to take charge or tell them what to do, right? Because the problem is now that Logan is dead, they're all on the same playing field. There's no successor. They're all on the same level. And so nobody really wants to tell the other guy what to do. And they don't really want to be seen, you know, fighting for power on the day that he died, right? So everyone is just kind of like waiting for some sign. So they do all these subtle things to try and get the other side to give up, right? Like, again, you have two camps. And somebody, like, they tried to take leadership, like Ken tried to take leadership, right? The whole thing about, let me call the airplane experts, get them on the phone in 1 to 2 minutes. Like, that didn't even make any sense. He wanted to talk to the pilot, right, to make sure he was flying the plane right. Like, there's really not much he could do. This whole thing, I think he had a great line about, you know, let's just call people, we can get a funeral off the rack. You know, we'll just mimic Reagan's, but with some tweaks. Like, he's trying to prepare funerals. He's thinking in the future, so he doesn't have to really deal with the present moment, which is that his father is dead and nothing is certain, right? So Ken tried to do his best, but again, it was just kind of like in vain. Like he just didn't really know what to do with himself in that moment. And the one thing that Kendall does do well is make it known that they're not estranged from their father, right? Because the closer you are to Logan, the more power you have. And it's essential that these kids are not seen as having been estranged or separated from their father. Right, and there's all this tension going around, right? Everybody's jockeying for position, and everyone's trying to get the other side to bow out, right? Like, you could see Shiv's face when Jerry was like, we can excuse you kids on compassionate grounds? Shiv's face almost dropped, right? It's like, Jerry, you fired. And if Shiv had known she was fired, I don't know what she would have done. You know, compassionate grounds, right? Like, everybody's trying to get the other side to move on, and it's very important that, you know, people are seen close to Logan, right? Tom says it best. He's like, my protector is gone, but it's important that everyone knows I was with him when he died, right? And that's the point, right? It's important that people know that I was close to him, so people can't say anything, right? So everyone's kind of jockeying. They're playing these little games, right? The fact that they sent in Hugo to play liaison with the kids as like eyes and ears, right? And the kids kind of clocked that. And because it's such a sensitive time, they can't really be seen aggressively going after each other. So everyone is just kind of moving in very subtle ways and agreeing to things. And one of the things they agreed to is this statement, right? Who's going to make the statement? And at first it was the people on the plane, and then it became the kids. But then everybody wants their name on the statement. Again, like, people are jockeying for power. But the one person who has no power is Carrie. Like the way they did Carrie, Chuckles the clown, like I freaking laughed. Like I couldn't believe how savage these people were. And the thing is, they closed ranks pretty quickly, right? Like there was no like, it's like you out, right? It's like musical chairs. Like they're fighting for a seat. And I think either Carrie or Jerry leaked it, but I'm not sure which one. I suspect Carrie because she looked pretty angry when she wasn't involved in the statement. And shout out to Tom. Tom was trying to keep the peace. He was trying to give her something to do, but you know, his team wasn't having it. They're like, are you kidding me? Invite Chuckles the clown? Like, I was like, y'all are savage. So her safety net is gone. And so there's not much left for the rest of them. And so what's the plan, right? It's like, that's kind of the question. What are they supposed to do? You know, like whose decision is it, you know, whether or not they move forward with this deal? Whose decision is it if they don't move forward with this deal, right? Like maybe they don't sell, or maybe like what's gonna happen, and who has the power to decide what happens and when? And a lot of this power has to do with, you know, who's seen as being more capable of holding this power, which right now is none of them, right? Like absolutely none of them. Okay, so Ken says it best when he was like, what we do today will always be what we did when the day our father died. Right, so again, this proximity to Logan, making sure they're not looking like they're cutting each other's throats. Like they need to move in a way that keeps the door open for them to move forward, right? They're highly liable to misinterpretation. So the kids are in a very vulnerable spot. Everybody knows that Logan has separated from them. Everybody knows that they've been vying for this spot to be successor. Basically everybody knows that Logan wanted anybody but his kids to run this company, and that's something Kendall is thinking about. He's like, okay, we gotta like restore legitimacy here, and the first step is making sure we're not seen as trying to delegitimize our dad. One of the things, as I said in the beginning, was I was really impressed by how these kids were able to maintain, you know, they were able to keep it together. They were able to divide up tasks according to who was able to, you know, handle that task, right? Like, and there was no judgment. No one was, you know, going down each other's throats, which I appreciated, right? So Roman will handle Lucas, Shiv will handle the statement, and Kendall will handle, I guess, everything else. And so they did a very good job of balancing that all out. And I love the scene, like this contrast between, you know, when Logan's plane is landing, you know, kind of solidifying that it's a new era. And then this whole like sequence of shots of, you know, the children going from the big boat to the small boat, you know, from the yacht to the small ship to the helicopter. Like that was a fantastic, like, it was really aesthetically interesting, and it was really wonderful to watch. And one of the saddest shots, like there were so many moments in this that you would have missed, but one of the saddest was when Colin was waiting for Logan to come down, and then he realizes that he's dead. Like you can see the worry, the panic. He doesn't really know what to do, right? Like, what do I do? And that's the situation with everyone, right? Like they're kind of, there's no captain here. And as soon as Carrie got into that back seat, I was like, he's not your driver. You know, like Colin, drive away. You don't need this. Like that really annoyed me when Carrie went back there. I said, that's not your car. And you know, Colin just drove her away. He's like, I don't even know what to do anymore. That was such a sad shot because you could see he was super sad. You know, like he, like, you know, his face said it all. He didn't even need to say anything. And so Shiv's statement, just before the statement, Ken and Roman are kind of bonding, right? Kind of, you know, reassuring themselves that despite being totally effed, there's still hope. And Shiv's statement, the whole point was like, okay, this is an American family. You best believe that we're going to shepherd this thing through. Like the whole statement was basically about them making it clear to the public that, you know, we're here to stay, we're not estranged, and we're very much interested in where this goes. And so the episode ends with everybody kind of going their separate ways and to grieve silently and alone, right? And just before they part ways, they have this one last hug to kind of solidify, like, whatever happens, like, we got to stick together. And I think one of the saddest scenes, right, is there are so many sad scenes, right? So when Shiv goes with Tom, there's a really interesting moment where Tom is just looking at Shiv. Like, it happens in a few seconds. because he has no idea, right? His future kind of hangs in the balance of Shiv, and Shiv is looking out the window like she doesn't know what to do either, right? And the only person who wanted to see the body was Roman, and I think Roman needs to see it to believe it, right? Like Shiv and Kendall know he's dead, they accepted it, but with Roman he needed to see it, right? And that scene of him like taking off his jacket and walking to the plane as if this is all a giant misunderstanding, and then him coming off the plane realizing that it's real, like it happens in seconds, and Kendall is watching it all like, you know, just crying. And I think Kendall, like ending the shot with Kendall is interesting because he was supposed to be the successor. His father died quite suddenly, and things are not any more certain now than they were, you know, from season 1. And I think as much as he hated the things his father did to him, he still grieved him, he still cried. He felt devastated that he had gone. You know, like that moment of him just standing there, you know, just crying by himself, I thought was very well done in the dark, right? Like end of an era, lights out, like there is no hope anymore. And it's a different Kendall, like this isn't the same immature Kendall that we saw from season 1. He's not as power hungry. I mean, he is, but he's not. And he's a lot more competent than before. So the decision to end with him was interesting because he's gone through a roller coaster of emotions. And now it's kind of like, damn, like, do I really want to be a successor to this anymore? Like, do I just cash out and leave? You know, so I think he was hoping to feel a bit more angry than he was. But the fact that he was just bawling, right? Like, I think he was just like done, right? He was just genuinely mourning his dad. And I thought that was a beautiful episode. It was probably one of the best hours of TV. I enjoyed the roller coaster of emotions. I enjoyed not knowing, like, is he dead? Is he not dead? Is this a test? Like, again, it was very effective, right? Because the shock that happens when someone dies, like, it's unexpected, right? You don't know. And the episode did it had such a tricky task of getting us to sympathize with them and getting us to understand what they're going through, right? And by understanding what they're going through, we sympathized. And that was just so well done. So you guys let me know what you think, and until next time.